Must have been quite the remarkable trip to Israel and United Arab Emirates last week, Robert.
Well, it was very special, and it was brought about by the courage of Bibi Netanyahu and Mohammed bin Zayed and Donald J. Trump. Who were able to put together a historic deal, and I can tell you that flight from Tel Aviv Ben Gurion Airport to Abu Dhabi International Airport was a very special 3 hours, and I was honored to be on the flight with our Israeli colleagues. Really overwhelmed with happiness and emotion at the event.
I just talked to Ambassador Oren, former Israeli ambassador to the United States, last hour, and he said it was a remarkable flight, too, but coming back, there were just Israelis on that plane, and it flew over Saudi airspace, which is a first as well. People are not recognizing, I think, how significant this is.
No, it was a really big deal. I mean, just from a commerce standpoint, cutting a flight that would otherwise take 7 hours to 3 hours is huge. But linking up the startup nation Israel with its Silicon Valley economy and high tech with the financial markets and capital center that you have in Dubai, which is also Abu Dhabi and Dubai and the Emirates. That's a game changer for the Middle East. You're now going to have massive investment. I think the UAE sovereign wealth fund is over $2 trillion. You're going to have the opportunity for massive investment in Israel. You're going to have the opportunity for Arab pilgrims to fly into Ben Gurion Airport and go up to the holy city of Jerusalem and visit the Al-Aqsa Mosque and be welcomed there. So just the economic ties, the cultural ties are going to be fantastic. The big losers, of course, are going to be Iran and China. So you'll have Israelis will have another place to turn for capital in addition to the U.S. and China. I think you're going to see a lot of deals that are going to push the Chinese out of the Israeli tech market. I think you're going to see a strengthening of the security relationship, which is going to be very, very detrimental to Iran. So it's just a terrific deal for the countries involved, and it's an honor for the United States to be able to help broker that peace.
I saw you sitting on the plane next to Jared Kushner, and I remember when he joined the administration, he was widely ridiculed as an amateur. But I believe if anyone put more hours into this than anybody else, it's got to be Jared Kushner.
Well, look, I think what Jared would tell you and what I tell you is that the credit for all of these deals and what makes it possible for Jared to do the negotiations or for me to do the negotiations on the international front is President Trump. But having said that, Jared is just a terrific. Doesn't have the official title of ambassador, but he's a great ambassador for the American people, and he's done this time again and again. He put significant time into the USMCA, the new NAFTA, the better NAFTA, our trade agreement with Canada and Mexico, and Jared was instrumental there. He was instrumental in this process, and he continues to work on very difficult problems for the president. So it's great to work with him, his team, and Special Envoy Berkowitz to get together with our NSC team. Really did and together with Secretary Pompeo and the State Department team. It was really a strong effort across the U.S. government, and Jared played a key role. So it was great to be sitting next to him on that flight and see the fruits of the labor.
I'm going to talk to the Secretary of State tomorrow, Secretary Pompeo, about the strategic balance, which I think has shifted, and maybe you can give us a preview on that. China did a deal with Iran, which is a deeply disturbing deal, but all of a sudden the strategic balance in the region has just shifted dramatically. When the UAE and Israel get together, all of a sudden that telegraphs to Iran, I'd rather be on the side of the UAE-Israel than the United States, and behind them maybe Sudan, Oman, Bahrain, and Saudi Arabia, than be with a collapsing regime in Tehran and an overreaching and much reviled regime in Beijing. I think that's the wrong side of history across the peninsula from the UAE.
No, there's no question about it. And look, this was brought about because the president did some things very early on in his administration. He recognized the reality that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. And he did something that many of our past presidential candidates and past presidents have said they'd do, but didn't. He moved the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem. He recognized the annexation of the Golan Heights and realized that you didn't want the Syrian regime with commanding heights over Israel, and so he built a lot of trust with Israel on the Gulf side by withdrawing from the JCPOA, which I've consistently said was the worst form of appeasement since 1938. which the Iranian regime received $150 billion in sanctions relief and took that money not to better the middle class and the people of Iran, but took it to fund proxy wars in Lebanon and Syria and Iraq and Yemen. By withdrawing from that deal, he gained tremendous credibility and showed the Gulf Arabs, our traditional allies in the region, that we're with him. And so because of those strong actions, he set the table for this peace treaty to come about. And it's really extraordinary if you trace this back 3 years and watch the steps that the president took to prepare the ground for this historic agreement. And again, it's peace through strength. It's something Republicans have believed in for many, many years. And it's just the opposite of the appeasement we saw in the prior administration. And now we're seeing the fruits of that effort.
Now, I want to talk about the technology and wealth transfer going both ways. The United Arab Emirates, not many people know that. They have the gold standard nuclear facility in the Middle East. They actually have the safest, most non-proliferating, but still energy-producing complex in the Middle East. Israel, as Seth Siegel describes in his book, Let There Be Water, they lead the world in desalinization. I can't imagine these two countries won't be collaborating on both of those advanced technologies for the benefit of the region and the world.
No, I think you're going to see it in water. I think you're going to see a tremendous cooperation in healthcare. Folks don't realize what a great job the UAE has done on the COVID-19 crisis, working on vaccines, working on therapeutics, making sure that their population was well taken care of. There's a tremendous healthcare industry in Israel. A lot of great scientists there in the UAE. So I think you're going to see collaboration on healthcare. I think you're going to see collaboration on tourism. I think you're going to see collaboration on trade. Certainly tech, desalinization, and nuclear power are two areas that are that in both countries' wheelhouse. So I think the business opportunities are going to be extraordinary.
Now, have you seen, or I don't know that this is in your lane, it might be more in the lane of Secretary Mnuchin and Secretary Pompeo, American capital trying to elbow their way in? We've got some big banks that are going to see this partnership as being unique, and early in means early win.
Yeah, look, this is creating a bigger pie, a bigger economic pie for the UAE, for Israel, and for the United States. And we run a trade surplus with the UAE. We have a great trading relationship with Israel. So as those economies strengthen, it provides tremendous opportunities for the United States. And Ambassador Lighthizer, our U.S. trade rep, will be working with the UAE and continue to work with Israel. Secretary Mnuchin and Secretary Pompeo will be working the economic angles. But I think these are our two most capable allies. They're two incredible. They're small, but they're two incredible economies. And them getting together and 1 + 1 = 3 is going to be good for those nations, but also good for the United States and folks here that want to sell and trade and do business with UAE and Israel. No question about it.
Let me talk about one specific thing. I watched a screener this week of a rough cut of a movie called Hope in the Holy Land, and it focuses on the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. And in it is a primer on BDS. And it occurred to me when I watched Hope in the Holy Land, BDS is over. That is done. I think this deal between the United Arab Emirates and Israel has effectively smashed the BDS movement, which was evil to begin with and discriminatory. But do you agree with me?
Oh, I agree. And the BDS movement is fundamentally an anti-Semitic movement. It's people that don't want to see Jews living in the Holy Land, living in their traditional land of Israel, a place that they've been for thousands and thousands of years. And it was really a despicable campaign of people that hate Israelis and probably hate Jews. And what you're seeing in the region is, as you see, a normalization between the UAE and Israel. There were already peace deals that, to their credit, Carter and Clinton had brokered with Egypt and Jordan. I think we're going to see additional Muslim majority countries normalizing with Israel over the next months and years. And I think it's going to smash these efforts of really radicals that want to delegitimize the state of Israel and tell Jews that they're not allowed to return to their ancient homeland. And so I agree with you. I think that BDS movement is gasping for air and on its last legs. By the way, we're committed to a two-state solution for Palestine and Israel. We want to see the Palestinians in their own state with their own government, hopefully a democratic government and one that thrives economically alongside Israel. The Palestinian people, if they would come to the table have a unique opportunity with this president to show that he can get great deals done. He'd love to get a great deal done for the Palestinians, one in which their per capita GDP doubles and they have control of their own destiny. And we've got a lot of credibility with the negotiations to work with our Israeli friends to make sure that happens. And so this is an opportunity for the Palestinians to come to the table and get a great deal for themselves.
Let's expand on that and close on that. If you're a member of the Palestinian Authority and you know, Abbas is just not a helper here, but if you're someone lower down with ambitions, now you have another avenue. You've had Jordan and Egypt for a long time, but now you have the sophistication of the UAE. Do you expect the Palestinian Authority to birth some new initiatives, even though politically I know what they've got to say, just like the Iranians are sending them a lifeline, so they got to say all the nasty stuff. But behind the scenes, do you think there's going to be movement?
I think young people in the region want what young people around the world want. They want hope and opportunity, and they want to be able to have a great house and great education for their kids, and they want to be able to get married, and they want a terrific future for themselves. That's a universal desire. The younger Palestinians want it. The problem is with some of this old leadership that's hidebound and tied to the old PLO, Marxist, Leninist, revolutionary struggle mentality of the 50s and 60s. They've been doing quite well under this current agreement. They've been getting a lot of money from radical regimes, and they're doing very well at the top. What we need to do is have a new generation of Palestinian leaders, younger Palestinians that want a great future with themselves alongside their Arab brethren and their Israeli neighbors, and it could be just a fantastic future for the Palestinians. Our hand is open to help them to reach that future, and I hope that they'll take that extended hand soon.
Last question: do you expect any more accords before the election?
We're not on an election timeline, and never have been. The president wants to make sure that these are good deals and lasting deals and durable deals. They're very complicated to negotiate. This has been 70 years in the making. Since the independence of Israel, there have only been 3 of these peace accords. So we're working closely with a number of Arab states that are quite interested in doing what the UAE did. I think some of the other Arab states are watching to see the reaction internationally and also within the UAE. So far, it's been a very positive reaction, both domestically in the UAE and internationally. You've got a couple of the outliers like Iran that are unhappy, but we expected that. So I think there are going to be deals, but there's not an election timeline. The president wants to make sure whatever deal is done is a good deal for Israel and for the Arab country that normalizes with them, and that it's a long-term deal. So we're not driven by the election calendar and never have been.
National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien, congratulations again. Thank you for joining me, and may you have many other first flights to other Arab countries from Tel Aviv. Thank you. Hey, my friend.